Um, yeah, first of all, I'll mention that the last part of your video really kind of hit home to me, and I realized that I need to mention that I do philosophy to supplement my thinking about things. It supplements my art endeavors, um, and so it's not my it's not my main thrust. It's not how I spend my time particularly, and I wanted to mention that. Um, yeah, this last video of yours was really impacting the first time that I watched it, and I thought, God, I am just, look at all this that I'm missing and not getting and assuming and so forth. And then I listened to it again, and I realized, oh boy, it's still not sinking home what my points are, and so this is the haggle. This is the back and forth. This is the argument. But uh, okay, let me think of two analogies before I start here. One analogy you might think is about the like a proto-geometric uh, envisioning. In order to have the analogy, we're going to talk about some geometry here. So the first analogy is blowing six roughly the same size six soap bubbles and having them all come together such that they yield a seventh bubble in the center, and that seventh bubble is a square bubble. And the second analogy is playing catch, throwing ball back and forth, and the idea of throwing ball with somebody that whenever they catch the ball, they look at it and then they drop it. They never throw it back to you. Okay, so let me start off by stating that when I well, first of all, your paradox at the beginning, um, have we found any cultures? It's almost as if how you're referencing that it's a paradox is that, well, we've kind of already found them. We kind of already know them whether we've found them or not, because we have this language thingy that can permeate any unknowns, even if we did discover them. Something to that effect. Perhaps that's not what you meant by that. But I think that this is why I attack you. Is I think that in essence you are the essentialist, and I compare you to Chomsky. You're right. You haven't brought up Chomsky in your videos, but the reason a lot of your claims, a lot of where you start your discussions already start with the premise of certain essential attributes to language. Okay, so what I'm suggesting is this: that all these six bubbles that are spherical, those are the recursive languages. Those are the ones that you know, and those are the ones that you seemingly have been able, in what I'll say is a reductive sense, to extract what it is you believe are the rudiments and the necessary complexities of language, and define them and define all the languages as having these attributes. Well, this center cubish uh, bubble, some guy made this bubble structure and he stuck a straw through the membranes of the bubble and he blew smoke into the center bubble. And I just thought that was a great comparison, because this language that I'm referencing is like that. You have a bunch of people in there and that are genetically similar to us. I'm not when I mentioned I shouldn't have used the word inheritance. I should have mentioned to be caught up in language. I think that's better. The people that speak this language that I'm referencing, the Piraha, and I really wish you would just watch this guy's. Look up Daniel Everett. Take a look at his stuff. See if it's profound at all. But these people, Corey, if these people, they don't count. If you if you didn't have any numbers above the number 4, and I asked you to count to 10, what would you do? Um, these people don't count. They don't have mathematics. They don't they don't tell you about the history of their tribe. They might tell you about the history of their own experience. So that's as far back as their history goes. They don't have a god, and because they don't have a sense of future or past, they have no telos. Because they can't count, they have no mathematics. They have no creation story, and they don't have a hierarchy. They simply are referring to like generation. Well, here's another generation. These are the littler ones, and here's the littler ones. But it's not placed in hierarchy, and it's not to say that they don't have convention. The women do something and the men do something. So what I'm getting at and what I'm suggesting here is that you're so caught up in the notions of what it is. You're willing to start as a premise that language, and by saying language, I'm assuming that you're referencing all human languages. And so, like Chomsky, you're making what I am saying. You're making a universal statement, and it's different than Chomsky talking about a universal grammar. And and universal grammar is, he's trying to find something in our genetic code, our physiology that is rule bound, as opposed to suggesting that the model for language is free floating. It's I'm not in denial that we are physiologically, genetically different than animals that don't speak language, um, than animals. But I'm not saying we're genetically different from this other group. I'm simply saying that when you go to when Daniel Everett went to this tribe and he tries to speak of numbers, they drop the ball. He gives them the ball, they drop the ball. If he asks them to mention things outside of their own history, tell me what the perspective of somebody else is in the group, they will reference what they've heard from the other person. But if no one's referenced it, if no one's seen an idea, they don't have any reference to it. They can't talk. Like, I know how a satellite works. I'll never see the satellite that works, that functions with my cell phone and the towers and whatnot, but I have an idea of how it works because I have recursivity. And so, and this is kind of the smug thing that you pull, like, see, that's the problem. Here you are telling us, see, language is like X, Y, and Z. And what I'm saying is no, I'm within one of these spherical languages. I'm within one of these recursive languages, so I can discuss things like this. I have a history. Our language, our interaction is socio-historical. Okay? And so that pointing back to me in that is reiterating the the more enriched elements of language that you start as your premise, that I'm trying to say, no, this needs to be shucked like corn. Some of these elements that you're talking about need to be ripped away because we have a demonstrable culture that if you discuss counting, they will drop the ball. All of a sudden, beyond 4 or 3, it becomes a bunch, and then a big bunch, that type of thing. Okay, and so, I'm not certain what to say. It's as if I can't get you to strip the very rudiments down anymore, and so in that sense, I'll say that you are the essentialist, where you're bringing in essential attributes to language, and I'm trying to strip you of that a little bit more and have you wake up to the idea that your previously held notions are wrong. Now, this, Husserl's eidetic realm, or private language, Wittgenstein's private language, I'm not suggesting that that this culture is impenetrable, that you can't learn the language, because Daniel Everett went in and learned the language, and it took him a very long time. But kind of this notion that their language is very inaccessible, and even when he's within the language speaking to them, uh, he can't play ball. It's not a dynamic relationship like you and I are having a very dynamic relationship. He's having a very what the Absurdity of Philosophy book by Jeff Smith Ludke suggests. His invention is to call it monamic, a monamic relationship. Kind of like a cloud informs you when it's going to rain, or when a child is expressing no sign to the parent. It's simply uttering things, and the parent doesn't actually even know whether it's hungry or it needs its diaper changed necessarily. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. It can't always tell why the baby's crying or how it's communicating. It's interacting, it's guessing, it's narrowing the field. And kind of like Chomsky, like, well, in terms of universal grammar, well, universal grammar is strictly the node, the physiological attribute, and anything beyond that is magic. So I'm not denying the physiology. I'm simply saying that if you if you don't know the 14, 16 words for snow in Eskimo, you don't know them. You can't play ball with them until you learn that. And so if I show up and I say, well, here, Corey, here are the 14 words for snow, and you don't attempt to learn them, they don't register, you don't want to learn them, you drop them. You won't play, you won't have a dynamic relationship. And so that's ultimately the point that I'm driving at here. And I'm disgruntled because I can't, once again, I can't seem to get you to strip down. And I'm saying that you are caught up within the spherical languages, the recursive languages that house the embedded properties of language. And I'll dare say that you believe that the human physiological node includes mathematics, it includes a telos, it includes counting. And I'm not trying to deny the potentiality of the physiology, I'm just trying to say that it requires the culture of math. I mean, I could not have learned to count or learn to add prior to counting. I can't learn upper division math prior to the advent of division. I mean, so my point is not that these things are embedded. You and I state that they are embedded, but to this group, this isolated group, there is an embeddedness, or we can sense what it is they're lacking, but they do not have that. Their worldview is registered in single frames, what's coming into their experience and what's leaving their experience. That seems to be the limitation, and yet they are still human like us. They still speak like us, but they don't have puns. They don't have metaphors for embeddedness, recursiveness, and such. And so when you're saying, aren't all people, to the extent that they can speak, partially able to learn math? No, they're not. And here's a demonstrative example. Check it out. For the first time, maybe you need to bite your tongue and see whether or not there's something to this claim that I'm making. So those are my thoughts. Well, let me see. Yeah, so imagine a language that has no writing, an oral language. And, your story about the Indians, we know what this is about. But imagine not just an oral language, but imagine a language that can't do all of the things that I've mentioned, that can't count. It's oral, but it can't count. It's oral, but it can't tell you its own history. And yeah, what to say? I'll leave it with that. Cheers.